Alrighty, welcome to episode 50. Wow. Of Full Circle. Your host, Chad. Cheddar Caveman on lots of stuff. On the internet. Don't call me that in person, it's weird. Today, what I want to do is start a series. It'll be a 5-part series. On theme forces. The only way we'll go more than 5 is if a magical theme force is delivered for Christmas that won't be delivered for that's not happening. But if it did, we would talk about it. Thank you, chat. Just real quick, we'll go over a little bit of news, and then I'll go into the series. There isn't really any news. The War Machine Weekend wrapped up. It's kind of a quiet period between now and I guess ATC is probably the next major event in the United States. Not too much release-wise. The World White is obviously coming in January. I talked about that last episode. Crick CID is still happening. We're looking to be some downgrades for some of the Ghost Fleet and Denegro ones, so that's going to be good for us ultimately as well as the rest of the game. And some mini crate stuff was posted. Some cool models. Feral Geist, which plays for Circle. So if you've wanted one, get in on that while you can. If you can, I don't know if you still can, but if you can, you should do it. Looks cool. And otherwise, things have been pretty quiet. What I'm going to do with the theme forces is first I'm going to read over what they are. I've probably talked about all of them at some point, but just to put everybody on the same page, or if you're joining for the first time, I'm just going to read through the information on the theme force, and then what I'll do is talk a little bit about, first I'll definitely go through, and this is going to be true for each one, I'll probably repeat this on each episode just to be clear, but I will talk about what warlocks I think would be effective, what pieces you kind of want to take a look at, directions to go with your build, potentially like weaknesses and strengths of the build, of the theme, things of that nature. Maybe depending on how time goes, maybe we'll wish list, for, since we don't have any, since none of these have had a theme release. We do know Devourer's Host. Well, we know there's Tharn being released. I assume it'll be focused around Devourer's Host. Whether they add another theme or not will remain to be seen. Obviously, there's like 2 themes in CID right now for one kind of theme release. So we don't know what they'll do in the future. But we may talk a little bit about what could be neat to see as maybe at the end if we have some time. So I'm just going to go, my plan is to go alphabetically. So this week we're going to talk about the Bones of Orboros. I don't count the word "the" at the beginning as for alphabetizing. Sorry to those of you who might. So I'm going to read pretty much all the text here. So first, the flavor. Since the Order's inception, the Blackclads of the Circle Orboros have passed down secrets of shaping and animating wood and stone to do their bidding as wolds. The product of ancient rites and blood sacrifices, the massive stone constructs patrol the old places of the world and ensure sacred sites of the Order remain untouched by outsiders, falling upon intruders without hesitation to crush them under fist and foot. The Druids also summon forth these stone constructs to batter into submission those threats too large or well defended to succumb to the Circle's traditional hit-and-run tactics, using brute force to buckle the armor of machines and shatter the bones of great beasts. Cool. Composition. So this theme force can include the following. All Circle Warlocks, non-character war beasts with the construct advantage, Megalith, Stone Units, Stone Ward and Woldstalker units, Blackclad solos, Gallows Grove solos, Celestial Fulcrum battle engines, and Circle structures. The benefits include the following. This army can include 1 minion solo and 1 minion unit that will work for Circle. These models can be included even if they have the Partisan Circle special rule. Minion units in the army can include attachments. for every full 25 points of Circle Warbeasts, Circle Battle Engines, and Circle Structures in this army, you can add 1 Circle Solo to the army free of cost. Before leeching during each of your control phases, you can remove 1 damage point from each Circle Warbeast. And finally, your deployment zone is extended by 2 inches forward. Okay, so those are the benefits. So first, let's kind of hit on what sort of. First, I want to hit on a higher sort of an arching theme. So this is the Construct Warbeast theme. This theme follows a lot of the similar layouts you'll see in other factions. Almost every faction has at least one of these where it's focused on their Warbeasts or Warjacks, where for taking a big battle group, the more battle group or battle engines are often lumped in there. The more of that stuff you take, the more free stuff you can get. But then obviously that means how your support works out is going to depend, because you kind of want to maximize the benefits, so you want to take a bigger battle group, but that minimizes the amount of support you can actually take, because you can only get a maximum of 4 free models, or 4 free cards, if you will. And in the case of this theme force, that's then tied to Warbeast points. So you can get, if you can get exactly 100 points of battle engines and Warbeasts, you get 4 free solos, and then I think technically 32 is the most points any of our warlocks have. Pardon me. So at that point, if you had 100, that would leave you with an extra 7 points you could work with. So that's kind of like how that'll work. 5 extra points if you have 30, which one of the ones we'll talk about has. You get the idea. So it's as few, reasonably speaking, it's about as few as 2 points over that you can go, and then up to, like I said, 7, depending on the warcaster, or sorry, warlock. So speaking of warlocks, let's talk about what warlocks are going to be able to play in this theme. So when I talk about this, I'm not going to say that every one of these must play in this theme. I may highlight if I think it's their best theme, but as we talk through this, this doesn't mean that you have to play them in this theme, and it doesn't even mean that I think that there's currently like some strong reason to, but I'm going to highlight why I think that they can be played in the theme. So just going to kind of go through in order. The warlocks I think they can play are Baldur 1, somewhat obvious reasons. Baldur 2, both of them are focused on constructs. I think Baldur 2 is extremely potent for. Bradigus Thorol, the rune cover. This, unlike what I just said, and I'll come back to these after I list kind of out what I think. Bradigus is obviously very focused on wolds, and this is probably the optimal theme for him. Then kind of as I'm going to kind of go through those alphabetically as well. So I would not, in general, you might be able to do it, I would not in general recommend Grail. I wouldn't in general recommend any of the Kayas. I personally would not in general recommend any of the Chromax, although some people have played, I've seen lists of both played with them. I personally find them a little bit more cute than good. But if you have some inspiration there, I could be wrong easily. So Kruger the Stormlord, I think is Kruger 2 is a very strong option. Kruger 1, you can get a lot of forked lightnings out with Kruger 1, but in general I don't think I would recommend it here, because his big spell is kind of Gale Winds, and you're not going to be able to take realistically enough benefit from that. Again, this could be another case where I could possibly be proven wrong, but I personally don't really see it. Mosar the Desert Walker, he could play in this theme. I think you'll find this is true for all 5 themes. I don't. I think Mosar can kind of play in any of them, and kind of plays awkwardly in all of them, at least for where I've been with him. But that's okay. I need to spend a little more time. I don't really tend to recommend either of the Morvanas here. They're both focused on infantry, and you can't really play enough infantry here. to make that work. Tanith, the Feral Song, I would recommend. I think she's almost our most generalist warlock, and she can kind of be good with everything. She doesn't always like stretch completely far in any one particular direction, but she can kind of be pretty good into a lot of different ways, depending on how you build her. And finally, Wormwood, I do think has some strong play in this. So we could talk generally about things, but I'll do that real quick. So the other things that are included in there, obviously, all the stone things and battle engine structures. We don't have any structures yet, so that might be one of the things we can talk about at the end. Megalith recently got added to the theme, and one of the important pieces here is going to be that minion solo unit option, especially for Wormwood. That benefit being able to, because this one of the things that this theme force lacks is access to really any meaningful amount of living troops. So if there's some reason you want those, or you just need a unit that isn't one of the basically three. So the only units in this theme are the Druidstone Ward and Wold Stalkers, the Sentry Stone and Mannequins, and the Shifting Stones, I do believe. At least currently, those are the only units. So if you need a unit that doesn't like operate like they do, or you need souls for some reason, you're going to want to look at that minion benefit. There's also just other potential things for the solo that I think can be beneficial. So, and for a few of our warlocks, just having that as the benefit is important, because there's like a unit or solo that I think is critical. For example, I'll probably end up covering this every one of these episodes, but the Swamp Goblin Spellows crew, I think, is very critical to Tanith's list, for example, because she has native prowl, or she has prowl all the time. So let's kind of go through a little bit. So Baldur 1, if you're going to build him in this theme, I see absolutely no reason why you would not include Megalith. At 20 points, he is a little steep. These days, he's the most expensive non-gargantuan, I guess, thing you could add to this list. But his bond with Baldur will help him heal a little bit. It's not as critical here as the next discussion we have. Baldur 1 is another very generalist caster. He does a lot of things. I think he has one of the better spells to Geomancy, actually, damage-wise. Earth Spikes is range 10, POW 13, and ignores cover, hills, concealment, basically everything but stealth, I think. We'll double-check that while I'm going. POW 13, we don't have, in case you're wondering as you look, we don't have a spell that does damage higher than POW 13. Double checking my memory. Yeah, we don't in this faction. So, yeah, Earth Spikes is ignores cover, concealment, and elevation, and it's critical knockdown. So, but it costs 3. So, like, Baldur rarely he only has 6. He only has 6 Fury, and he wants to upkeep. He generally wants to be upkeeping his solid ground. He frequently is upkeeping the stone. I should just left this open. I'm totally having one of those days where I can't remember the names of Stone Skin, Solid Ground. He's going to upkeep. He may want to cast another Rapid Growth Force, or he may even want to upkeep that. At which point, then he's sitting on very little Fury, and that is not really where he wants to be. So I think if you're going to play Baldur 1, I really think you want to look at Geomancy. I think a Woldwrath becomes actually pretty interesting with him. He can increase its armor. It's got a good gun. He can make it. One of the things he does for Wolds is make them run or charge for free. Yeah. The other piece then, the Sentry Stone and Mannequins can be pretty interesting with him. So since he has that 4-inch forest, combine that with some terrain on the table, add another 6 inches of forest from the Sentry Stone, and you've got a pretty compelling LOS block when you need it. And of course, if you've played Circle for any amount of time, the Sentry Stone and Mannequins can, if played correctly, be a very strong piece for your list, because it gives you bodies that can get boosted attacks throughout the game. You might, just a caveat, and this applies to all the things. I have not played a list I have not played every warlock in every theme that I think is viable to to tell you for sure if something is strong. Actually, that is a great question from the chat. Question is, do you see a spot for the Druid Wilder in Bones with Baldur 1? And I'm going to address that more broadly than Baldur 1. There are a number of Warlocks that have a number of upkeeps, and you can take the Druid Wilder as one of your free solos. However, her main ability, in my opinion, is Shepherd's Call, which is an ability that lets her remove Fury, or add or remove Fury from friendly faction war beasts within 3 inches of her. But it's one for, it can remove multiples. But there's a catch, it's living. The Druid Wilder to me has been a pretty tough model to justify most of the time, because she's 4 points and she's really, really just a support piece. You're gonna have a lot of trouble using her in some other capacity other than support. So, because she's like Mat 5 and magic ability, Mat 5 POW 8. She does have a magic weapon, but you're not sending her in there. Herding does have some benefit if you really know that frequently you're going to be getting pieces in your battle group out of your control area, and your control area effects are not relevant, then reconsider what I'm saying. And if you're finding you're extremely, extremely strapped with your upkeeps, it may still be worth including her. But for the most part, when I'm looking to build lists, I want to take advantage. I want to be able to take maximum advantage of a piece for it to sort of justify its inclusion. And I feel like the Druid Wilder, she's included, much like Una 1 is technically included in this theme, because it doesn't make sense to say Blackclad solos accept and then list them, when you can discern for yourself that obviously those 2 pieces are not going to fit in this. Una 1, just in case you're not looking, doesn't work because she's not allowed to take living war beasts in this theme, and you can't play her unless she can have a living war beast. So unless we get a Wold that flies, Una 1 is sitting on the sidelines. So that addresses the Druid Wilder. I think most of the time the solos you're going to be taking with this list are going to be Blackclad Wayfarers and Blackclad Stone Shapers until we get any new solos. I could see a rare occasion that maybe it just works out that you take a Gallows Grove in those points. But by and large, I think those are the only options presently that you would be taking. And I think those are great. I think you're going to want those in any of the lists anyways. Blackclad Stone Shapers are there because they repair. They make our wolves hit harder, as we've kind of talked about in the last couple of weeks. And they repair, hit harder, fury management, and they have a spray. So very good. They also synergize excellently with the Fulcrum that gives them +1 to hit, as do virtually all of the Warlocks in this theme, since most of our Warlocks are Blackclads. And same sort of situation with the Blackclad Wayfarer. Getting the free charge is going to be pretty good, and the +2 inches is very relevant for our speed 4 and 5 wolves. So just sort of to address some generic stuff. So, but with Baldur 1, I think if it were me, I would be looking at focusing on the Geomancy aspect. I would be looking to focus on his control pieces as always, and then sort of filling out the rest of the list. I think you're going to have, with all of these Bones lists, I think you're going to pretty frequently have a big battle group. I think in the case, and a lot of it, you're going to also be doing the debate, do I want a Fulcrum or do I not want a Fulcrum? Baldur 1 could play a Fulcrum, but it's not the first piece that jumps to mind with him for me. A Woldwrath with him, I think, could be very strong. I think you could just play heavy War Beasts with him as well. I think light War Beasts get pretty interesting with the free charges as well, and the new +2. So yeah, I don't have anything specific with Baldur 1, but that's kind of the direction I would go. Then let's move to Baldur 2. So Baldur 2 has actually been considered by many to be one of our very compelling tournament options. And he's sort of like fallen off a little bit recently, and I think that's because a lot of folks have been down on the fact that both his feet and Roots of the Earth are both affected by blessed weapons, or no longer benefit you if your opponent has a blessed weapon. And that's caused some people maybe to step away, because if that's kind of his Achilles heel. If they have a lot of blessed weapons to get around basically his like signature spell and feat, you're not really looking at something that's too desirable. And but that's okay. So, but I do really think he's a caster that's going to play in this theme. I think when his situation works, he's still going to be extremely strong, and I think that works in a lot more cases than people are being concerned. Their blessed weapons are out there, but they're not so ubiquitous that one need assume that Baldur 2 is not competitive. Baldur 2 is a very straightforward list, however. He's the most defensive warlock we have, absolutely. He has the ability to give out +3 armor to any single model at any single time. The change to the Black-Clad Stone Shaper to give him +2 to give any of the wolves +2 damage is pretty massive, because one of the problems his list sort of had perpetually was that your damage output was sort of tied more or less just to like bringing a Wold Wrath. And a lot of people would bring 2 Wold Wraths just for the skew of the fact that you have these 2 armed 23 gargantuans, and if you have no way to kill them and they can stand in zones, you're screwed. Your opponent's screwed. I still think I don't think that Baldur 2 has to play a Wold Wrath, but I think it's extremely strong with him. I actually think that Fulcrums are very strong with him, as well as it gives them going up to 26, 28, I forget, wounds and armor 19, which was a Mark III change, combined with then giving his spell giving them another 3 armor. So now they're armor 22, makes them pretty resilient to being shot back, as well as being immune to elements. And they're going to make his spells +1, so it takes him up to magic ability 7 effectively, as well as the Black-Clads that are probably going to be in his list. So it kind of gives you some more infantry options where you didn't have those previously, as well as being a decently tanky piece that's independent of the caster. So I think a Fulcrum here is definitely something to consider. I think the Wold Wrath is still very, very much something to consider. 28 wounds on the Fulcrum, thank you. I think the Wold Wrath is absolutely something to continue to consider. Armor 23, 50, I think it's 56 or 58 boxes. Can't be targeted by spells. And his Animus, you don't hear a lot of people talk about it, but the Animus on there can be extremely relevant if you need to be using crevasses to get the hit. Now keep in mind that the Animus only counts the targeted model, so you will get it on the direct hit and then on the model you target with the spray, but you will not get it on any of the like incidentally hit by the spray models. So just keep that in mind. There is 0 time when you should play this Theme Force and not bring Megalith, and that's just purely because Baldur 2 needs the healing and you need the Geomancy. With the change to Wold Wardens, I think they're a very viable option. I think that if you're finding you need shield guards, that you're going to look at Wold Wights. I also think that really any of the Wold War Beasts are going to be fine. I don't get super excited about Wold Weirds with him, only because you could play them and they would probably be fine. They don't seem to play into his game plan as much directly, where you sort of want to be this like unkillable armor brick. But that said, that they could still certainly have a place. I think Sentry Stones and Mannequins are another strong one. I think you're still going to have Shifting Stones. I would definitely maximize your options to heal in this list. So I would go 2 units of Shifting Stones and I would go 3 Stone Shapers, because like every point of healing that you can get out there onto your beast is just going to make you that like play to his playstyle, which is being really tanky. And keep in mind, the theme is already giving you so I didn't talk about that benefit, but the benefit the theme has, where it gives you an additional point healed all the time. With Baldur, who can heal them because he has a special rule, less of a big deal. But with some of these other warlocks we're going to talk about, they can't always get a Shifting Stone into a position to do that healing, or a Stone Shaper. And so to keep your beasts functional, I think that's a very amazing benefit. Baldur 2's army is a little bit slower, so the +2 inches on deployment is going to be fantastic there as well. The rest of that's going to be really focused around like getting some play with Baldur 2, knowing when to put the rock wall down, knowing when to feat, knowing when to use Roots of the Earth, on what models and so forth. That just takes some time if you're going to play that list to get used to. Also focus on finding ways to not lose on scenario, because he kind of wants to be somewhat close together in the middle. So, or wherever his controller is. So you want to make sure you're playing for that correctly. Also, don't forget that toward the end of the game, he can actually put some pretty heavy hurt down on some stuff if he has the right number of worm tokens on him. So just something to consider there. Okay, that brings us to Bradigus, the Thorol, the Rune Carver. So Bradigus, while I just stated that Baldur II is sort of the most defensive warlock, I think of the Wold warlocks we're going to talk about, Bradigus is the most offensive. He does have a repair ability of himself, but his kit is pretty focused on offense. He has Synergy, he has 2 spells that can be Geomancy, both of which are relevant. He has a feat that is going to help you get the alpha. And he basically has no, other than the fact that he can kind of hit and run with that feat, he has essentially no additional defensive tech. So with Bradigus, what you want to focus on is A, knowing what matchup you need to be able to put damage up, and B, then on where to apply your offense and how to position appropriately for that, and also C, to use your other utilities to keep yourself safe. I think in this list it's going to be very important to use things like Wold Whites, which both hit very hard offensively. They can use their Animus for free, which again helps them hit hard offensively, as well as lighting enemies on fire. And their Shield Guards, along with the Wold Guardian, both Shield Guards, and you're going to want to really make sure you're focusing on positioning carefully to utilize those. That also goes for, we'll talk about this now, this will come up again, but one of the things that now when we have some a little bit cheaper Shield Guard options is that you can use Wold Warden's Animus now, where the Animus on them puts a forest in play, but the model that casts the spell cannot be placed or moved in any way, basically. So they're sort of in that forest, and you're like, well, that's great that it blocks line of sight to things behind it, but that that Wold Warden is sitting in there and is very killable. It's only defense 12 with concealment. It's armor 18. It has 35 boxes, but that's not the most tanky thing ever. But now with these cheaper Shield Guards, you could conceivably, like say you need to get Bradigus up the table pretty far, you can use the Warden, drop the 2 of them drop forest. Now you've got 8 inches of forest coverage, and you can put your Shield Guards in position so that you're basically spreading the damage from shots around so that those 2 can survive until the next turn. You can do that with Wold Whites. You can do a little bit with Wold Guardians, although they're pretty expensive, so you're probably going to want a little combination of both, if not just Wold Whites. And also on the, and I'll probably talk about this again in places, but also with the minion unit option, the Pharaoh Valkyries that are coming out in December are another great option for doing that strategy. So just some things to keep in mind there. But Bradigus is, like I said, he's going to be able to play very offensively. You're definitely going to want those Black Cloud solos that I mentioned. I think most of these, if I say you want to focus on Geomancy at all, I think you want to really be looking at Wold Wardens being in your list. I, in general, sort of see them... I sort of see the Wold Warden now in this theme. Pretty much any of the lists you're going to play with this theme, like, he's sort of your default beast, your default heavy. You kind of start with him because he's got the most utility for what he does. He's 14 points, so he's the cheapest. He has the ability to cast any spell that costs 3 that can be that has a target and is not an upkeep. So he sort of acts as a pseudo ranged beast in that way, but more flexible because the spells have other abilities usually. At power and strength 16, he doesn't hit the hardest, but he goes up to power and strength 18. He's mat 6, not the greatest, but there are ways to assist with that. Theoretically, you can still get 6 attacks if you get your smite, depending on positioning. You're going to get 5 most of the time, unless you need a boost. Things like that. So that's sort of the... And if you see a Warcaster where Geomancy is something that you want, and so far all of them have had some aspect of that, look at the Wold Warden kind of to start, and then see if you feel like you need to upgrade one of those to Megalith, if there's a specific reason, like you're bringing Baldur, for example. or you really feel like you need them at 7, or do you need to hit harder. If what you're finding is you just need more offensive output, though, you're going to want to shift from the Warden to the Guardian. Or you may want both, but that's sort of the discussion you need to have in your head. How hard do you need to actually hit? And sort of look at it that way. With Bradigus, I think you're going to run a combination of Guardians and Wardens, and then sort of fill it out with Wold Wights and Wold Watchers. The Wold Watchers are, some people are not terribly happy with them, but they lost the point. They're mat 6. I actually think they're a very good anchor light piece with a lot of utility. So I think Bradigus will want any of those. I would not play Wold Wrath with Bradigus just because he doesn't. I really don't like not getting the feat. I mean, synergy on it is great, obviously, but I personally don't. I don't like losing out on that feat because I think that takes away. It makes your list more predictable, which is not good when you're playing offense like he wants to. Again, my opinion. I think you could do it. I just wouldn't. You could play a Fulcrum with Bradigus as well, but sort of the same reason. Most of his kit is focused on his battle group. And so I think supporting that is always going to be a better venture than going the way of the Fulcrum, but it is going to be another way to help manage your Fury, and obviously does bring a gun. So don't totally dismiss it, but again, if it were me, I would focus more on the battle group and the support thereof. And if I wasn't going to, I would look at something like Sentry Stones, I think, before, just because there's less points than the Fulcrum to sort of be separate from my battle group. Or possibly some minion options. And Wold Wights are just fantastic with him. I would say he absolutely plays them the best. So if you're looking for a new place to play your new toys, Bradigus is going to be your best bet there. Just to address this, because I'm sure it'll come up, I do think that you could potentially play you could have both of your lists be played in Bones of Orboros. I think that is absolutely viable. I just would try to make sure that they're not playing the same style of list. Like, I think, for example, you could, I don't know if this is the most ideal, but you could play a Baldur 2 and Bradigus pairing. Bradigus is there to do offense, Baldur is there for defense. You can kind of judge maybe how that goes. That's not something I've searched for, but I can conceive of that being viable. And then some of these others we're going to list off later. I think you could also work with, like a Bradigus for armor cracking and somebody else that's sort of like your control infantry answer. So that's kind of Bradigus. Let me double check where I got here. So I'm just going to go ahead and skip down to Kruger the Stormlord. I'm going to sort of go over. It's going to be kind of quick to go over some of the ones that I said, like I think you can play, but I don't know exactly what it'll look like. But Kruger 2 I think is absolutely, Bones might be his best theme right now, but I think he's still very playable in many of them. He loves the +2 inches on deployment because now he's getting up the table, which means he has more control over you. Kruger 2 probably has the best spell list for Geomancy that we have. He has 5 spells, and 3 of them can be Geomancy. That's Telekinesis, Gallows, and Lightning Storm. And knowing which of those spells that you need to Geomancy at which time is going to be very key to playing him. TK is an amazing spell. Gallows is a much better spell when it's being Geomancied because it only costs 1, sort of, basically. And then you can boost the hit and boost damage, which is going to be pretty key. And it's +2 inches of range. So it actually opens up using that spell where Kruger on his card really frequently is like, well, why wouldn't I just TK if I absolutely need it? Because that'll guarantee 2 inches and turn them around so that you can hit. But now with now I would say like Gallows being able to keep your Wold safer, and most of the time you'll get the same distance moved or better. I mean, you're rolling a d6, so you've got a you only have a 1 in 6 chance that it's worse by rolling 1. So and you drag them, and then there's a POW 13 attached to it. So, but again, if you absolutely need to make sure that you're getting at least 2 inches, you're going to want to look at TK. If you need better to hit, look at TK. I like Megalith still with Kruger 2, just because, again, he kind of anchors that list. He's got +1 magic ability. He's got some more ways, his Animus helping with defense and so forth. Kruger is an option where I would probably say Fulcrum every time. Kruger loves being able to go up to magic ability 8. He wants the infantry removal, I would say. he wants the Fury management, I would say. Just everything about that is a win in my book. I don't think it's absolutely necessary, but I do really like it with him. And the list is a bunch of different ways it could go. You can play a few more heavies if you need to skew in that direction. You can go with more Wold Weirds. If you need RFP, you might want to go with the Wold Watcher. Again, I think the minion solo or unit might have some play here with him for some of the same reasons we've described. All in all, again, like I said, it's a very good piece. Question is Sentry Stones or Wold Whites with Kruger 2, and my answer is it depends. I would not play absolutely outside of Bradigus, certainly with Kruger 2, so certainly with Kruger 2 it would apply. I would not play less than probably 3 Wold Whites, unless you really just find that you're needing one Shield Guard or something, but reason being that the way that Animus works, you kind of want one of them to light the other 2 on fire, so that they don't have to spend the Fury to do it themselves. Because otherwise you kind of have to do it with Kruger, and that seems bad. So there's probably some play there where that's not a terrible idea. There's sometimes when you're still just going to want to charge and then light yourself on fire because you want to get other models on fire, but in the times where you need them for damage, you're going to want to do it in the order that I said. So I think you're going to kind of want... you're going to want to have multiples of them. I think Sentry Stones are potentially very strong with Kruger for a lot of really obvious reasons. The list I've been testing doesn't have them, and I've been sort of trying to figure out if I can get them to fit in there somehow, and so far I'm not liking how that's working out, but I think Sentry Stones are still a very strong option with Kruger 2. I would probably, for infantry removal, be looking at the Fulcrum first, personally. Again, because it lets me play a little bit bigger on my battle group, which is key to this theme. And again, Kruger, so this Kruger is one of the first ones we've gotten to where the repairing 1 point in is pretty huge. And I didn't mention this, but Megalith heals himself a D3, and Wold Wardens heal themselves 1 point automatically, so giving them a 2 is good, obviously, too, because it means if it's alive, you can make sure all its systems are up. So that's Kruger 2. I think, again, very strong place to be doing some testing with Bones. I mentioned Mosar. I know a lot of people have been looking at playing him with this. He brings Curse of Shadows, which is an obviously strong debuff. He brings a Fury 8, which means he can have a lot of War Beasts and be okay. He brings Mirage, which can help something move an additional 2 inches. But to me, you are missing out on Sands of Fate, which I think is a pretty key spell. You get Pillars of Assault, which can sort of disrupt your enemy's plans. You get Sunhammer, which can start chipping away. These things are all kind of true for all Mosar lists. To me, the loss of Sands of Fate makes him a little bit not exciting, but I do know a few people have been looking at the list and trying to do some testing with it. So I don't have a ton of personal insight there. While I think he can play in it, I don't think it's his strongest build. But again, that's just me. Kruger 1 I mentioned. I'm just going to briefly gloss back over that. But with Kruger 1, I think you're really going to want to focus on... you really want to focus on the Geomancy aspect, and I suppose you can still put Lightning Tendrils on pretty much any of the Wolds. But it's not the first place I reach with him, just because you're not going to take advantage of get wins. So see if you can get work out of Forked Lightning, but don't be surprised if it's not feeling ideal. That brings us to Tanith. So Tanith can kind of play with whatever. Scything Touch means that you can get your Wolds up to +4 damage between that and the Blackclad. She loves sprays with Affliction. You can easily kill entire units of incredibly high armored single wound guys. Like Black Dragons from Khador and Dawnguard Sentinels just hate stuff like that. I would say a lot of stuff. The unit of dudes in Convergence with the shield and the small base, you can wipe out entire swaths of those in the same way. So she really likes those aspects. A Wold White would probably be a pretty good beast to use as your arc node for your theme, or sorry, for your feat. Admonition is pretty strong on any melee beasts. Megalith Admonition seems good. One amazing piece that you can do here too is you can include Loki, which gives you some pretty awesome threat range extension, and he's a great target for Admonition or Scything Touch. Downside being you have no way to primal him, so you're still kind of relying on your wolds for damage, but you can use Loki for the positioning. And let me double check one thing on the theme to make sure that I didn't misread. Yeah, it just says Warbeast. I want to make sure that the 25 Warbeast didn't say Construct Warbeast. So for those Warbeasts, yeah, being able to bring Loki, I think if you're playing Tanith, you're looking pretty hard at bringing Loki in that list because he's amazing. And it's the only time right now that you can play him, so I would recommend it. But yeah, being able to get that hook out there to bring something in closer to your slowish wolds is good. Question in the chat: Admonition works on the Fulcrum works. It would, but Admonition has to be cast on a battle group model. So I think your question was, could it move out of activation? And it can. I glossed over that actually to talk about the Fulcrum. Don't forget it can be placed. It can't be pushed or knocked down, but it can be placed. So Shifting Stones are very strong with it, as is TK and Mirage. Yeah, so Una, I don't have a particular list with her. I would focus on, like I said, bringing Loki in the list I think is going to be pretty strong. Rift is still a strong Geomancy spell. I didn't mention it explicitly with Bradigus, but she also has it. It's a very strong spell, the Geomancy. Reducing the cost of some of the Animi by 1 is going to be nice. You occasionally might even be able to get a Woldbeard in position to use its Animus in a way that's relevant. But getting a 1-cost Undergrowth can really reduce something's defense significantly. Between her gun, Affliction, and Undergrowth, that's -7 defense. There might be a time that that's necessary. One of the things with her, and like I said, I'll probably repeat this all the time, I would use your unit to bring Gobbers. Although if she doesn't need to worry about Admonition, the Warden's Animus actually is a pretty good way around that because it creates a forest which will trigger her prowls. So if you think you can use that to your advantage, you may not need the Swamp Gobbers. But because of all her spells also are debuffs effectively, you except for Admonition, which is battle group, you can certainly consider minion options pretty heavily here. And then so that's kind of it on Tanith. And then on Wormwood, who's our last option, because Una can't play in this because you can't bring Scarsfell's Griffins, or any flying beasts. Wormwood is another very compelling place, mostly because it is extremely strong to Geomancy Stranglehold, and then you still have your caster to put out Hellmouth and or Curse of Shadows as you need, plus the other strong control elements that Wormwood brings. I've seen some silly lists with like 6 Wardens. I wouldn't go to that extreme. And you can bring the Sentry Stones with them, which a lot of people find that are sort of key to their Wormwood play. The one incredibly compelling piece here is that you can also bring sufficient souls in the list, which you couldn't do until the change that added the minion and merc option. Stuff to consider here is going to be still your Bone Grinders, I think. You could bring a big unit of something like Nis Hunters or Pharaoh Brigands if you want a lot of models. You could bring as few as you could also do like one of the best solo to bring if you just need souls is actually Swamp Gobber River Raiders, because you get 3 of them for 4 points. It's not the most efficient souls, but like you get 3 souls in a list that otherwise has trouble bringing them. You could go back and do some of the things we did with the Boker and Swamp Shamblers, where you use them as targets for a lot of stuff. But then you're going to be a little deprived of souls of your own since they're undead. But there, yeah, you're going to want to focus on the geomancy aspect of Stranglehold, which is a much, much better spell when Wormwood doesn't have to cast it, because you're almost always going to be boosting to hit and boosting damage if you really need a Stranglehold to hit. And it's a very awesome spell if you can make it work. So, Megalith hits pretty hard with the buff and Crystal Shadows, taking power 21. So, that's kind of the other place to consider is with Wormwood. So that's kind of all the Warlocks. In general, the list is going to be a little bit more straightforward than some of our Living Beast focused stuff. You're going to be fairly light on infantry. Like the best you can do would be you can take Druid Stone Ward and Woldstalkers. Right now I feel like they have a little trouble competing in the range damage arena with Sentry Stones or with Wold Weirds, or certainly with Fulcrum. But to get units in the list, you're really going to be looking at your minion options, which is fine. But just, this is not really the place to look if you're going to be doing an infantry-focused list. I do think that each list can be built to handle... You could play a Bones list and handle pretty much most of the gamut of the game. Your weaknesses are obviously going to be generally still skewed towards things that... can handle armor well, and while not caring about defense. But the things that are accurate but don't hit very hard are going to be a strength for you to play in this list in general. So those are some things to consider when looking at this theme. So that's Bones of Orboros for the most part. I'm really liking where the theme is now. The changes we just got are fantastic. I think this is, some people think it's our best theme. I'm not really here to judge that. I'm just saying, if people think that, it's a very positive sign for the theme. I think it's very viable. I think it's pretty viable with the Warlocks we just talked about. And I definitely can, if you've been on the fence, like, should I play some molds, I would check out this theme. It's not the only theme you can play them in. We'll be talking about them again down the road and a couple of the other themes as well. But this one is the one where if you really want to focus on the battle group, which is sort of one of the central circle things, especially that we used to do in Mark II, this is the way to do it. I think all of the wolds that we have, have a place in this theme in different places. So try them out. Now we're going a little bit long, but we'll do some rampant speculation. So if we got a CID or a theme focus around a theme release focused around this, or even just if we added more models. So we just got the Wold White, so I don't really know, and we do know Devourer's Host is coming. So So, no idea when this will happen or even if this will happen. But obviously, it mentioned circle structures, so there's some foresight there that they expect that there's going to be some development with that. And so seeing a structure would be pretty cool. As in addition, I could see definitely there's a lot more direction that Wolds could go. We have 2 heavies is all. I could easily see a more range-centric heavy being added, something maybe that does lightning damage. Although with this not really playing with the Storm Raptor anymore, debatable if we see something like that or if I am as excited about it. I think with seeing the Wold White and like more focus on the fire, I could certainly see that we get more constructs focused around our different elemental types, much like the Fulcrum. Construct warriors, somebody mentioned. We have those in the sense of mannequins. I could certainly see some more stone units, actually. We don't really have like an artillery piece. The closest we have, I would say, is the Sentry Stone. So I could see that being something like a Sentry Stone that maybe does range attacks on its own. I could see more terrain generating pieces seem to fit within this theme, although they'll have to be careful to make them not overpowered. I'd love to see the Wold Stalkers sort of get looked at again. I think for what they do, they're just a little costly, and they damage wise they kind of compete with some of our other things like Wold Weirds. I would like to see them sort of get their role re-evaluated. I think in as far as like what they bring to the table. I think that'd be pretty cool. I think it'd be cool to see more Blackclads that interacted with Wolds. Like I think it'd be cool if one of them had a rule that helped magic damage, maybe, which makes our sort of like focus on that geomancy aspect. Another Warlock attachment I think would be pretty cool that focuses on the Wolds, something that armors up maybe. Trying to think if there's any other Blackclad solos. I mean, character Blackclad solo that does something. I would actually really enjoy seeing a like journeyman style Circle Warlock that I would like to see a few of them, but one of them working with Wolds I think would be pretty cool. Adding sort of adding that with maybe some functionality that works really good with some of the lights would be pretty cool actually. Yeah. I could see there's plenty of room for designing other Warlocks in here too. I could see a character Wold for Mosar that does like erosion would be neat, like sand, some sort of sand light. There was the Wold Seer was a jack in or a beast in one of the campaign leagues from years ago. So anyways. Those are sort of some of the ideas. You know, I don't know what a structure would look like. Obviously, there's a lot of like standing stone type stuff. Also, the Wolds seem very in our magic area, so like the more placement type effects that we could get, as long as we can keep those reasonable, I think would be neat. Yeah. So we're gonna go ahead and call it a wrap there. Obviously, I'd like to thank all of you for watching. Real quick shout out, Muson Minis. I'm going to keep trying to post my videos there, and they're going to keep letting me. I'm going to keep talking about how they're awesome. So check out their stuff on musonstore.com if you want to buy anything from them, and their main website is musonminis.com. And then, of course, I would be remiss without thanking my sponsor, Griffin's Roost Painting, right there where I'm pointing. She paints awesome looking display high-level models. So take a look at either her website, griffinsroostpainting.com, or search on Facebook for Griffin's Roost Painting, and you can find all the information you need. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll try to catch you next week where we talk about, I believe, Call of the Hunt. So until then, bye-bye.